All right, well, we will go ahead and get started, and folks will dial in and join throughout. That's what we've seen pretty consistently with our programming. Thank y'all so much for being here. We hope you are all staying healthy, safe, and sane during this work from home and stay safe timeframe. We are really excited today to have John Thomsen from Atmosera presenting about maintaining connection and collaboration while working remote. I had the opportunity to see this presentation already, and it's really impressive. So before we start, we'll just talk really quickly through our rules of engagement. I am Kara Snow, again, Chief Community Engagement Officer here at TAO, and I will be serving as your moderator. From our rules of engagement standpoint, you can see on the screen, all of our participants have been muted upon entering the meeting. Remain on mute until a TAO staff member or a host unmutes you. With so many participants, it's probably better if you disable your camera unless you're presenting or asking or answering a question just from a bandwidth constraint. You can respond to questions in the chat box, privately or publicly. I think I'm actually logged in as TAO admin right now, so if you have any questions that you'd like to send in my direction, send them to the TAO admin and we will take care of that. You can also raise your hand, and I'm not sure if y'all are familiar with that function, but if you push the participant list, there's functionality on the bottom where you can raise your hand and we will call on you. So that will be part of the way that we get questions in here. And you can also clap. So as we get through this presentation, I have a terrible app that makes a clapping noise, but apparently it's wretched to listen to over the phone. So perhaps a virtual clap through the chat functionality would be more appropriate and better for everyone's ears. So with that, these are our TAO hosts. So me and then Justin Martinez, who you do not see, who is our event and program coordinator, but has also become our online community engagement manager. So anything you have from signing up to interacting throughout this is really him doing that. So big thank you to Justin. And then John is our speaker, but also one of our presenters. And I'm going to give him another shout out before he talks a little bit about himself and his company. He also serves on the TAO Board of Directors and is a longtime supporter of the Tech Association. So we're really grateful for John. And he's doing some really cool things with his organization that I know we're excited to hear about. So with that, John, I think it's probably better for you to talk about yourself, and I will hand it over to you.
Perfect. All right, so just share my screen, right?
Correct. We will hand that functionality over to you.
All right. Can everyone see my screen? Can you see my screen, Kara?
Yes, we can see it. Oh, and one more thing before John starts. John is a speaker that is happy to answer questions throughout. So we will have the ability to ask relevant questions during the presentation. So don't feel like you need to wait until the end. And with that, John, for real, now the floor or the screen is yours.
Perfect. All right. Well, thank you, Kara and Justin. Appreciate it. And appreciate everyone joining. I hope everyone's doing well, staying safe and sane, as Kara was mentioning. Certainly interesting times. And I'm somewhat of a rambling speaker, so I'm going to probably go down a bunch of different paths. I fortunately do have a slideshow here to keep me on track to a degree, but we're going to talk about maintaining connection and collaboration from the Atmosera perspective, right? I mean, there's a lot of things going on that's affecting tons of businesses and people all around the world, and there's many ways to approach, connection and connectedness and collaboration and all that. But I'm going to describe what we're doing, and maybe it'll give some insights, and hopefully it proves of value. So I'm going to start with this slide. This is absolutely not a sales thing whatsoever. It's really just setting the context of who we are and what we're dealing with, and why connectedness and collaboration and focusing on employees, customers, and operations is so important. So we're a global infrastructure provider. We architect, deploy, and manage Azure environments, Microsoft Azure environments for customers all around the world. And those Azure environments can never go down. We have hospitals, life flight, financial institutions, major companies, and ISVs, SaaS companies with applications business, who all their applications reside on infrastructure that we manage 24/7, 365. So everything we support, it cannot go down. And while we're structured better than most to sort of the remote, sort of the remote work paradigm, it isn't core to our DNA. Right. So our situation, yeah.
And we may have a little bit of cutting in and out. I'm not sure if anybody else was hearing that, but I wanted to give you the opportunity to maybe repeat what you just said.
Sure.
Yes, I'm having the same audio problem.
Huh. And it's okay. Well, but you can see the slides. So the core of this is that we're a critical service provider from an infrastructure perspective to companies all around the world. The applications that upon which their businesses rely to continue to operate reside on the infrastructure that we manage on a 24/7, 365 basis. So everything we support can't go down. And one of the things that while we're better, we're better structured than most to deliver from a remote perspective, it still wasn't core to sort of our DNA to do this on a mass basis. So we had to, in February, really think about how we were going to go about this, not from a technology perspective, but from a people cultural perspective that would translate into our customers and how we operate. You able to hear me a little bit better? I'm going to take that as a yes.
It's still cutting in and out, so I think that we might recommend you suppressing your video to see if that helps a little bit. That would be awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
And thanks for everybody for working through all of these new and unique event challenges with us.
My experience on Zoom is if the presenter dials in rather than uses computer audio, it tends to work better.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mark. We appreciate it. We appreciate the input.
So the video has stopped, right?
Yes, and then we can hear you.
And can you see my screen?
Correct. We can see your screen.
Perfect. Thank you. All right. I appreciate the patience.
We appreciate you.
All right. So here's the situation that we're dealing with. So we have a liberal work from home policy, but obviously we were actually prior to the governor's order, we required that everyone except for mission critical positions work from home. Some employees can do that really, really well, right? That they're used to it. They have their system, their rhythm, and all of that. Most don't, and certainly, at least in our company, I'd probably say 75% of our employees, and we have 75 employees, are not used to working from home, other than like snow days and those types of things, but not on an extended basis. So, for us in late February, it was how do we ensure that we can deliver effectively, because we still have to deliver at 100% capacity on this extended basis while keeping employees, safe, healthy, engaged, motivated, sane, and all of that. So that we didn't see the atrophy from both a personality perspective, but a work perspective. So the question that we faced in February was, what are the intentional programs of connectedness, communication, engagement, and social interaction so that we can maintain that high level of, communication, collaboration, and the ability to serve our customers, right? And that was the question that we as an executive team and myself as the CEO, put forth and, have attempted to address. So connectedness is a core element of our culture and the intentional culture that we're trying to create. A deficit relative to having a connected culture and that camaraderie and so forth is, poor cognitive performance, lower levels of physical health, substance abuse. I've heard a ton of how much people are drinking more over the last 4 weeks or so. These are all things that are can be a byproduct of the stress from, sort of this paradigm that we're now in, which is a lack of connectedness and normal routine around being able to interact with people a majority of the day at work, right? And additional resources or research says that, the lack of connectedness increases vulnerability to other stressors. And as you can imagine, there's a tremendous amount of stressors that are being now found in the home and in other areas as routines and rhythms have been disrupted. Causes a more intense reaction to negatives, right? Decreases sleep quality, diminishes willpower. All these things affect not only the individual, which is super important. We want healthy employees, sane employees, and all of us together working well, but it also affects how we deliver to our customers. So with this understanding, which is sort of core to our normal culture anyway, but with this understanding, this lens, we attacked that question on the previous slide. And we did so through sort of three areas: on the employees, which is a no-brainer, and then, on the customers, because our customers are going through the same thing, right? And part of being connected is connected to our customers. So how do we, sort of expand the ecosystem and not just be myopic on us, but expand it to our customers? And then ultimately, our customers are looking for us to deliver all the time, 24/7 at 100% effectiveness. So it's got to impact operations. So we got to look through how do we improve, connectedness remote work paradigm on the operational side. So from an employee perspective, at the core, at least our belief is that employees really look for these five things, right? Security, inclusion, power, order, and fairness. And on the security side, do employees feel safe physically in their job more broadly, from an economic perspective, things that are impacting us all as employees outside of just our jobs and, our physical safety here at this, at Atmosera. Inclusion, for us, it's not only that are we including people and we're diverse in our workforce and all that, but that they have a sense, that we all have a sense that we've been actually waiting for them to be here, right? And are they needed? Power to feel, employees feel say they have a say in what we're doing. Do they have ability to contribute? Order and fairness, do employees feel that there is fairness in how we operate and implement things, right? Is there a plan? Has it been thought out? So going through these five things, it's another lens through which, we want to implement activities and communication strategies and all of that to make employees feel secure, that there is order, right? That there is that people do have a say and that there is fairness in what we're doing. A lot of it comes down to communication and transparency. So the very first thing that we did, so I came back from New Zealand February 28th, and that's the day that, Oregon's first case was announced. So it was the very following week that this was rolled out. The very first thing we communicated was, our status as a company, any known impacts or thoughts of impacts at that time, the strength of our business and, our finance, we're PE owned and Goldman Sachs and all that, and where we stand from a strength perspective, just to say, hey, everyone, you can feel secure in what we've got going here, right? Or that we're, if there are known threats, here are they, or known impacts, we're thinking about them. Right, and then our plan, right, immediately, and how we'll evaluate and course correct as we know more, right? At that point, we implemented every 2 week, all staff meeting just to talk about this, the impact to the business, where things are, all that kind of stuff. And then we started talking about remote work, right? And this was the initial thing that we rolled out, right? Develop rituals and have a disciplined way of managing the day. Create a space for yourself. Make sure you have the resources. If you don't, ask for them. Ask Atmosera, ask me, ask the rest of the executive team. Schedule a start and end time, have a rhythm, and understand that your rhythm is going to be different, and that's okay. As people, I've experienced this. I've never really worked remote, but just in the last month, I've noticed that my rhythm is different. I usually get to the office pretty early, in sort of the 5:30-ish time frame, and stay late. And I'm now noticing that my rhythm is ebbing and flowing. And it's really based on motivation and sort of the environment and probably things that I still need to learn about. But I've noticed my rhythm. Other people have mentioned the same thing. It's okay. You want to get up, go out and have a walk, do some, you've got to take care of your kids or do something with your dog, or, those things are now commingled. The rhythms are going to be changed. That's okay. We've kind of been that way as a company anyway, but we've really talked about it as an organization in the last 4 weeks. For us, we've said, take a shower, get dressed. If it's not what you usually wear to work, then, get started, have some sort of structure. Make sure that you're taking care of yourself mentally and physically. That's a key theme. And then, a lot of our employees love to communicate and be with, the other employees. So make sure that you're reaching out and pursuing that interaction. But one of the biggest things we said is take it upon yourself, and we all support this, is how will I protect myself from feeling lonely or isolated, right? Stay healthy, productive environments. We're really forcing that message of you please take care of yourself. It's all right to do so. So from an activity perspective, we go through, daily activities, daily emails. We do trivia and games, team lunches, all, virtual lunches, check-ins. And then, we use Microsoft Teams. So we've, created a whole bunch of different teams, like Slack channels, I guess, so that teams can communicate more effectively. We've been leveraging Slack and then now Teams for a while, but obviously that's in much more use. But there's daily stuff that's, I send out a daily trivia email for everybody, just things that are getting people interacting on a broader base. On the weekly side, we do virtual social hours. We have weekly summaries of what's going on for the week, and especially related to COVID. And then penny in a pocket, which is something I learned a long time ago, where you put 5 pennies in your left pocket, and then throughout the day, you go and connect with somebody, not on a meeting basis, not about work, but just in a connection, a relationship perspective. And each time you do, you move the penny to the right pocket. So it's sort of the same thing, but now it's in a virtual world. And every one of the leadership team does this. And then on a monthly basis.
Hey, John, we have a question.
Yeah, sure.
What does employee engagement look like with all of these virtual touch points?
Yeah, it really depends on what it is. So the virtual social hours, which we do on Fridays, we pretty much have, surprisingly, most of the organization do that. The trivia that I do every day, it wanes based on the humor and all of that, but it'll go from like 60%, 75% of the company down to 20 or 30%. The virtual lunches, there's some teams that do it. The CSM team does it every day, and they're consistent and it works well for them. They happen to be a social bunch. The engineers, that hasn't taken off with them. So it really varies, but the thing is that there's a variety of things for folks to interact in. And then also, you got to change it up. Like our virtual social hours, the first one was fantastic, right? Like everyone was super excited. The second one was great because we figured out how to leverage Snapchat or Snap camera and, do all the faces and, all the things you can do with that. The third one was more trivia based and that was less, I think from my perspective, less great because it really funneled down to just a few people while we had most people standing in the back. So, but.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah. So on the monthly activities, we have, bi-weekly, all staff stand up and then just lots of communications. So, and then on our policies, so video on all calls. So anyone, internally, if you're having a call, the video is on. We have office hours for all managers and then office hours for a collective leadership team each week. So we've asked all the managers to just set aside, have virtual office hours. And then we as a leadership team, there's like 2 of us that, will rotate. Not all of us are on at the same time. There's daily check-ins, by team. And then we run that 24/7 shot, a knock. So we actually have to have physical people here. I'm in the office, our CISO's in the office, but we have people on our knock. And so we go beyond the CDC requirements, right? We've created security policies around the distancing and cleaning, and disinfecting, and then who is allowed to come in and work from home. And, there's a lot of stir crazy folks on our staff right now. They're like, I want to come into work. And you have a very, a clear policy around that. And we're actually rotating, which I think I get into a little bit later. And then on tools, right? So we use Microsoft Teams and SharePoint for the collaboration. We've always done leverage SharePoint, but it's certainly a great remote work function. We use Trello, which is tied to Jira for transparency and collaboration and progress of activities on projects and on Azure builds, those things. Bonusly is a tool that's aimed at employee recognition in the moment. It's tied to our values, and it gives sort of instant visibility and recognition around exceptional work. We leverage Cascade Strategy, which is our strategic planning tool that every employee has access to that, and that gives visibility into plans and projects and gets back to that, is there order? Do we have a plan? And we've modified some of the plans, obviously, based on all this remote work and then COVID and so forth. So, and then Tiny Pulse, which is something gives visibility into sort of employee mood and satisfaction, basically an employee, the pulse of the employees. So these are all good tools that we're leveraging. And then the other side is we created an employee-led team focused on activity creation, implementation, and then gathering feedback. There's actually an Atmosera blog on things that people who are used to working from remotely have suggested. This is what hey, here's some recommendations. It's all derived out of this employee-led team. And then resourcing. So big thing here, ensuring employees have what they need. A lot of our employees didn't have the right desks or whatever. I mean, we've gone so far as to actually put up an employee in the hotel for a month because he was dealing with some issues. And so this team is really is charged with making sure that the employees have what they need. They need a desk from the office. They need anything from here. Just come in and log it and take it home and all that. And then policy creation, ways to help employees and customers. And we also hired Diana Kutaya from Coaching Peace to work with teams and individuals as we go through this. That's lots of different things on the employee side. And then, shifting to the customers, I mean, they're handing over their mission critical infrastructure to us. So, that's a trust relationship. They want to still have a semblance of control and that they're being taken care of. And again, that comes to communication and transparency. So the activities here, we keep a customer monitor for sort of red, yellow, green relationship level and, where we are on renewals and just general health. We do that just a standard operating practice. But now we've increased the focus and stepped up communication, and we've introduced a filter on, what's the impact potential from from COVID. And we have some large ISVs that serve the education market, and certainly some large retailers. Icebreaker Clothing, global company with retail shops all around. All of that has been impacted quite a bit. So it's just understanding what's going on there, one for our own knowledge and health and being able to project our health, but then also being able to think, how can we help them? So the cadence of communication is increased, just general communication of where our stances are, our policy, how we're doing, right? So that they understand that we're financially strong and that, that we're capable of continuing our operational commitment to them. And then specific offers, where can we help them? Like free assessments, migrations, WVD has been a big thing. Expense analysis. We have a lot of customers, and then potential customers come into us that they're in Azure. They really don't know what they're spending. So how can we help them reduce their expenses and be a little bit more, thoughtful around their spending? And then remote hands, right? We operate 3 data centers, and a lot of folks don't want to have to come in. So we've, increased our remote hands, the folks that are on our staff that can go and do things for our customers so they don't have to come in. And then we communicate all of this to our employees so they understand what we're doing for our customers, right? And allow them to contribute to that as well, so that they have a say and that, they feel that they're contributing to the solution for the customer as well. We've also created policies around general inquiries related to assistance, right? What are you doing? Can you provide, are you doing anything from a financial perspective? Are you doing anything from whatever? How can you help me, right? Or if someone comes in and says, hey, can we not pay for 3 months or something like that? We've created, policies on how we're going to address that. So, if and when they approach, we have an answer and can provide that. And then there's obviously the communication and activities that we've got to make sure that our private equity and, Goldman Sachs and other investors, are staying connected to us and us to them around communicating what's going on. And we've increased the meetings there and the communication stance, and all of our meetings, obviously virtual, and our board meeting coming up in a couple of weeks has gone virtual. So, and then on the operations side, really it's how can we maintain the progression, right? So we're still growing as a company and still have aspirations of continuing sort of the global effort that we're doing. So how do we maintain our progression? How do we maintain the level of effort for our customers? And how can we get everybody to understand within our organization where everyone else is? When, if you're in the office, it's easy just to walk over and talk to somebody, or you might pick something up in the kitchen or something like that. So how do we, manage that awareness? And again, it really, a lot of it comes down to communication and thinking through the lens of transparency. So the activities that we have implemented here is, the first thing was like, hey, let's lead with trust. I mean, we try to do that anyway, right? But right now, as everyone is working from home, the natural, I think, inclination is, or tendency for many people is like, is that person really working? Is that they're not here? We're not a sort of a butts and seats organization, never have been. We're sort of focused on, running a business by objectives and outcomes, but it's a mindset that we've needed to intentionally ensure that we're, it's at the forefront. So lead with trust, right? Every manager and all of that, and every executive. And it's even more important now to have clear expectations and clarity of objectives of what success looks like. Right now that we're all working remote, right, and we can't all communicate sort of in an instant by being in the same physical location. Really have to understand, what success looks like, and compartmentalize that into timeframes, week by week, month by month. Ensure the tools work and everyone understands the functionality and use, right? So as we've migrated to Teams over the last 4 months away from Slack and some other things that we've had, it's really making sure that everybody can be a super user of those tools and the other tools that we're using, so that all of our work and how we're collaborating is still at that very, very high level. People are set up for their success in the work environment. So that gets back to ensuring that people have the resources, do they have the desks, do they have the monitors, they have whatever the situation is. We've said, come and get it. Let us help you out. Let's make your environment as easy to work in as possible, and make sure that they're set up for success. And then understand that other environmental factors are within the remote workspaces. So one of the things is that you have to really stress sort of that reciprocal empathy, right? We don't understand what everybody is dealing with at home or outside of home, but not at work. And there's so many different stressors going on right now. And so it's important from a leadership perspective and every employee perspective to go into those conversations when you can't meet someone physically, and go into those conversations with the benefit of the doubt, right? And to kind of step back and understand that we don't understand what's going on there, right? And so there are different environmental factors. So you just got to ingrain that. And that's something we actually, as an organization, talk about every week, or I bring that up as a reminder every week. We've also implemented additional requirements around data hygiene, and then this is a very specific example: twice daily updates to Trello and Jira for projects, just so that we have the visibility and sort of everyone understands the progress that's going on. It's very easy when you're all in the same sort of 38,000 square foot building. You can have those conversations at a drop of the hat. And so we're increasing the daily updates. We're also doing that relative to progress on any of the tickets and resolution status of the stuff that we do for our clients, on the day-to-day support management. At least one of the things that we've talked about every sort of 2 weeks is just everyone helping each other and watching out for sort of social interaction atrophy. So if, we're not seeing folks engage, if things start to fall off, if people are, talking in ways that, may indicate that they're struggling, they're lonely, and those types of things, just be aware and raise that up, raise that to the, employee-led team, raise it to a leader, a manager, and all that, but just have and watch for it, right? Have an eye for it. And then call versus email, video versus voice only. And one thing that we've stressed is just it's so easy in Teams. Just hit the call button, right, and call and do the video call. And no different than if you were to walk by someone's cube, is just ping that. And if they're not available, just like if they weren't at the cube or they were busy doing something else, you can turn around and go do something else. You don't have to. You can just hang up the phone. So that's something that we stress constantly every week, day to day. Is really don't try to change your habits in as much as how you would instantaneously try to interact with someone.
Hey, John, it's Tara going to ask a question. You're talking about some situations where frequently the cues you pick up on may be because you're in person or you're having a regular interaction. So have you had any specific examples where an employee is going through a tough time and y'all have been able to address it, that you can share anonymously, of course?
Yeah. I mean, I'll give you, so, we had an employee, one of our senior DBAs, who was having a challenge at his apartment. There's, I guess, flooding in the apartment next door, and his landlord, which I find, I don't know how this could happen, but his landlord was trying to get him out, or, basically, his apartment wasn't damaged, but he was trying to, get him out of the apartment. And, he had all this, he has all his furniture, he's working from home, obviously, and anyway, so what happened was the guy he's obviously going through a tremendous amount of stress from all the stuff that was happening extracurricularly. We could pick it up in just his mannerisms and voice and those types of things. He was too prideful to admit that, everything was okay, that kind of discussion. And so, myself and our CTO, we basically just said, enough's enough, and we're going to move all of your stuff to one of our storage units, and we're going to put you up in a hotel for a month, and so that you can focus on, de-stress yourself, focus on, your life and your so that you can do well from a work perspective, and either figure out what you're doing with your existing landlord, or let's go get a new apartment, or go get a new, go move somewhere else. And that's an extreme example, but just yesterday I got a cue from somebody that one of our employees in the marketing area seems to be very, very stressed, right? So I sent out, and myself as well, but was sent out to a few folks to sort of connect in with that person and just call, like, just have a conversation, no different than you'd say, let's go for a walk around the building or go out to lunch or do something like that, just so that people are getting that connected pick me up, right? So it ranges from sort of just picking up on cues where folks say, hey, I'm lonely, or this is stressful. One of the things that we did was we had a lot of folks saying, I got to get out of here. My family's driving me nuts. I'm in a small house or a small apartment or whatever. So what we have done, because we have 38,000 square feet, and there's only 3 executives here and a knock, which is confined to a specific area. We have plenty of space to do all of our security policy around physical distancing. So we're rotating people in 1 day a week into certain areas, just to kind of mix it up a bit. And this is really for just our mission, the mission critical folks. Some of our, obviously the engineering and technical people that are working on critical projects at the time and stuff like that. So those are the things we do.
Those are all great, and I wanted to ask sort of a follow-on question that we have in the queue. You're talking about like the stressors, and there's a lot that are just inherent to the situation and the changes and the unknowing, but then y'all find yourself in interesting position because, as you shared earlier, you're helping to keep mission critical applications up and running for hospitals and financial institutions and government entities. So, have you seen an increase in the workload, and, how do you maintain that balance of business as usual in the unusual? And it sounds like you're talking through some of those tactics, but you have this really interesting, additional, what some people would consider a stressor, even though folks are probably gratefully and gainfully employed.
Definitely. I mean, so all the stuff that I've been talking about is aimed at making sure that we can operate, sort of maintain that 100% level of effort, which, if we were all physically here, it would mean we're growing our business, we're closing sales, we're hiring people and all of that. And now we're just having to do it remote. So how do we do it in a more collaborative, communicative way, because we don't have the luxury of all being together? And how do we do it effectively? So, we have hired folks. We just, hired our director of build ops, brand new, joined Monday, right? And that whole interview process was remote, and the hiring was remote, and he did come physically for call 30 minutes to pick up his computer and stuff like that, and then go home. And so now it's just it's a tremendous amount of making sure that we're communicating and having those calls, and not just, you have to be intentional about it, right? And that's one of the things. That's why since I guess the first week of March, the last week of February, have been intentional about putting all these things in place. And we're still learning, and we're still course correcting on what works and what doesn't and all that. But it's an intentional effort, and it's a tremendous amount of work, right? So that it is more stress, but so far, based on what we've gathered from employees, my own connection with, I try to connect with a tremendous amount of employees on a daily basis. Everyone seems to be dealing with this well, right? And we are loading new clients, we're getting new business, we're doing all that kind of stuff. But it doesn't, all this stuff seems to be working. Where we've had the biggest issue from a stress perspective is in our NOC, because we actually do need physical people here to go through some of the physical elements that are required for data centers and some other things. And we have a very strict policy, as I would assume anyone does in normal times, that if you're sick, stay at home, right? Don't come to work, and infect others, and it's okay to be sick and blah, blah, blah. Well, we've had 3 people rotate out because they're sick and stay at home. And so now we've created an entire training program for different tiers of employees, based on experience, and ability to deliver on what's required of those sort of physical nature jobs in the data center. And so we've run through that training program. It's all video based. We're starting to we've been training people now for a couple of weeks, and rotating other people where their core job is not this into the NOC function for the last 2 weeks. And people have raised their hand, they volunteer, they're excited about it. I won't say they're excited about it, but they're not burdened by it. They're raising their hand immediately. So
awesome. One more question, since you talked about bringing somebody on board and that you have more. Do you all have a formal process for virtual onboarding that you could share? Have you operationalized that or written it as a policy and procedure yet, or is that something that you're kind of building as you go right now?
Yeah, we're making it up kind of as we go. We're following our standard onboarding process and standard interviewing process, right? As far as what rounds and who's in and what do we what do we require during the interview and all those types of things. And then the really the first person, so we've hired a few NOC people, but then they come in from a physical perspective and go through training. We have converted all of our training to online, but we've been doing that for a long, long time. But our director of build ops is actually the first person who started Monday, where they basically showed up, picked up their computer, and then they go home, and now they've got a whole team. We're following it just as if they were here. So all the meetings, all the people that you would need to meet, the cadence of the objectives, first day, first week, first month, those are all the same. Just happen to be virtual now. So
Awesome, thank you. Keep right on going.
yeah. So really, I mean, this, and I'm kind of ending it here, I guess, but this is to bring it back full circle, is that we looked at it through the approach, or through the lens of, how do we ensure or support or enable our employees to remain super effective, be healthy and safe, sane, take care of themselves physically and mentally, and maintain that level of connectedness in this remote work paradigm. And then we went through, as we thought about these things that we wanted to implement, we looked at, security, inclusion, power, order, and fairness. And what are the things there, right? Like, let's communicate how we're doing as a company frequently and transparently, so that people aren't worried about their jobs, right? And you see all the stuff that's going on in the economy right now, which is, really, really sad. We want to put those things at ease and talk about impacts to us, openly and directly, so that everybody has, and we can take that sort of monkey brain element off the table, right? So we looked through, that security, inclusion, power, order, and fairness, and have implemented all these intentional practices around keeping employees engaged, communicating, collaborative, and aware, right? And then we focused on the customers, because they're a point of connection for us, obviously, really important one, and saying, hey, what can we do here to keep customers feeling cared for while getting information to help them navigate this in uncertainty, right? Make them feel and understand where we stand and where we are in our ability and strength to support them, so that we can take that worry off their shoulders. They got enough to focus on. But then, how do we maintain that level of, what are the things that we can do to make sure that they understand that they're being taken care of, that they can have that peace of mind, and then where we can help them, right? Can we design programs? Can we implement services, either Azure-based services or policies here from we'll defer payments, or, whatever it is, so that we can help out our customers, because all that stuff's going to come back positively in the long run when you help people. So, and then that, obviously, if you're going to focus on customers, you're going to then implement that into the operations side. So, what are the intentional practices around and activities around increasing that communication, the objective and progress transparency, collaboration, so that we can maintain that same level of 100% effort, right? And I used to have a saying that during snow days, everyone's working at home, but probably 75% are working 50% of the time, and which is okay on a snow day. It's 1 or 2 days a year or something like that. And but under the sustained paradigm, we can't have that, right? And from what I gather from our discussions and the daily stuff that I interact with employees, and transparency that we see in what we're doing from a support operations and build operations perspective, and then certainly feedback from clients and employees, is that we're still operating at somewhere near, not 100%, but somewhere near that top level of performance, right? So there's going to be an impact, and we understand that, but just like rhythms of work are going to be different, right? It's you don't have sort of that demarc of coming to work and leaving work and all that. Your workday is something that you do want to create what we've recommended is create a structure around, but also understand that all the environmental factors and other things that people have to deal with are going to impact and now co-mix with all of that. So schedules and rhythms and things are going to be different, and that's why it's like, all right, let's manage to objectives. We're that way anyway, but let's really enforce that that's what's important. So
Well, and you bring
that's,
up a really good point from a question standpoint. Like you've talked through addressing so many different challenges, and I know that this has really only been, like, it doesn't seem like it's only been 3 to 4 weeks, but that's really all it's been.
right.
What's been like the number one biggest challenge in this moving to remote work paradigm? And it could be anywhere in your global business perspective, customers, stakeholders, employees. What's that biggest challenge?
Yeah, the biggest challenge was sort of getting our arms around what we wanted to do, and that initial sort of once people were all working from home, how do we maintain that collaboration, connectedness, awareness, mental spirit, positive, just attitude. That's been the biggest. That was the biggest challenge, like coming up with sort of this framework. What are we doing for employees? What are we doing for customers? How do we make sure our operations are still progressing and operating at a high level? And that first week, really that first 2 weeks, for myself and a couple other people, it was all consuming. It was 15 to 17-hour days, and not that we were working all of the time there, but the sort of the stress and the care and the empathy and the concern that for our customers and our employees, right? That we have to continue to deliver. Like I was in the energy business my previous career was in the energy consulting world, and I told Kara this is that something like this happened while I was at Ecos. You could kind of have a slippage of efficacy, right? And the people weren't going to die and like businesses weren't going to potentially crash or sort of blow up. The consequences were far less, right? I mean, there were still human elements and there's still all the things that we would want to consider that we're considering here. But what we do is so mission critical, we can't stop. So there's just that extra amount of pressure that we provide, a culture here of connectedness, and that we maintain that element so we have great operations and we have happy customers.
That's so well said, and I agree. That first week was really high stress, and I think sometimes the business leaders are not as gentle with themselves as they are with their employees. So I think that's a good reminder to do some check-ins for you. I know personally, I've been walking my dog a lot more. I think he's exhausted, so I should probably do a check-in with him. But it's just such a good stress reliever.
Yeah. No, you bring
I
up
have a question.
Go
ahead.
So, I used to race bikes, so I tend to ride a lot of bikes, or ride my bike a lot, indoor, outdoor, all that kind of stuff. And I was gearing up for the racing season, and they canceled all the races. So my motivation was like, oh my gosh, I've just been spending all these months training hard. That's gone. So my motivation was personally hit. And I remember the first 2 weeks, I was eating like, oh my God, it was like the worst eating habits. I was drinking wine probably way more than I should. And then I was like, all right, hold on a second. Like, I'm telling everybody else, like, maintain physical health, mental health, all this other stuff. But then I turned it to myself. I'm like, what are you doing? Right? Stop. So, last Monday, got back on the bike, started training, riding and training more, rode my bike to work today, those types of things, just to, so it is good to have that I'm always thinking about the employees and our customers and sort of sacrificing my own brain.
I found myself in a similar situation, and I know folks don't want to hear us talking, but I was supposed to be running the Boston Marathon next week. Yeah. Wound up being injured as all of this was going on, so that was kind of a blessing in disguise, but then was like, well, I don't really need to take care of myself. Managed to get into seeing my sports chiropractor before everything got really bad, and now on Saturday, I'm actually hosting 18 of my runner friends from around the country who would have all gotten together in Boston. And my sports chiro is doing a virtual running clinic called Running Prehab, so you don't wind up in running rehab. And like everyone was like, this is awesome, like what a fun thing. And so we'll be able to put our workout clothes on and get some instruction virtually, and it's kind of cool. I was also able to trade for that. I don't have to pay. I get to help him with his social media. So the creative bartering system. One more question that I've got, and then I'll see if there's any more, but there's one I've already got queued up. So we talked about a lot of things. I really appreciate that you've just got such a thorough approach with stakeholders, customers, and employees. How are you thinking that this is going to long-term affect companies, and even using yours as an example, but what do you think that's going to look like?
Yeah, I mean, first I hope that we can get back to some semblance of normalcy here in short order on a worldwide basis, United States basis, all that, and people get back to work and we figure out a way to, I've got lots of friends that are not working because of this, and that's, man, I hope we get back to some semblance of normalcy quickly. I know that's probably a wish right now, but from a long-term perspective, it'll be interesting because if this works for us well, and employees, we have about 25% of our employees work remote, right? And if more kind of get into that rhythm, and that's good for them, why do we need 38,000 square feet, right, of physical workspace? We probably don't. So it's definitely making us think from that perspective of how we sort of organize the business and structure the business differently. And then it has also expedited a number of adoption of tools and some things that we're now sort of developing in our innovation group. And I see that sort of translating on an industry basis more in my world, our world, is, and I think this will accelerate the adoption of public cloud, whether it's AWS, GCP, or Azure, as we've seen a bit of an uptake, and certainly conversations around I don't want to manage my own physical infrastructure. Right? I don't want to have to rely on my employees to have to go to some place and manage that physical infrastructure in a paradigm like this. I'd rather have someone, take care of all of that. And so we expect that to be an outcome of this. We're already seeing a little bit of that, and imagine as things get better, it'll accelerate. So.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah.
I don't have any more questions that I have lined up, and I think that we might have answered everything. But if you have any, go ahead and raise your hand. And I would also like to, as we wait for those, or even if we don't, say thank you to John. I'm going to try to do the virtual clap thing here for you, John.
Yep.
Let me see if I can make that. If I can make that happen, so that you can see it. There we go. Now you got two. Justin's doing it too. So we're learning as we go. We got a very informative thank you. I agree. That was awesome. This has been recorded. We'll share it out with our community. It'll live on our YouTube channel. So if you have somebody on your team that wants to see it, or a connection that you think may benefit for it, I really appreciate your commitment to everybody in your world, and focusing on some diversity, equity, inclusion during this time. So yeah, I will give you a round of applause and say thank you very much for your time today.
Well, yeah, thanks for the opportunity, and I wish the best for everybody. So thank you.
All right, well, glad you're back on your bike, and we look forward to seeing you really soon.
Yeah, all right, appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, thanks, John.
Yeah.